Welcome to Warblog. Hmm. Gonna do one of these games. Which one? They are very different because in this one the Saudi forces are winning, and in this one the Houthi sort of forces are winning. And it struck me as being quite unusual because you seldom see the Saudi-backed forces winning, which I actually find to be really peculiar. Because you would imagine that if they were backed by the Saudis, that they would just be absolutely winning. I mean, I don't know how big the Saudi army is, but I actually think they've got quite a sizable army. I might be wrong, especially especially in comparison to anything the Yemeni nation could have mustered, even at its prime, let alone after 6 years of civil war. When the bulk of their armed forces, the Houthi armed forces, appear to be young men with cat in their mouths, armed with nothing more elaborate than AK-47s and the peculiar ability to destroy everything in their path, along with, the guided ATGMs and their elusive ballistic missile capability. But that's all that said. I mean, it always strikes me as a bit odd that the Houthis are winning so rapidly, and this is one where they're not. So I thought it'd make a change, and I think I'll play this actually. So I put in lots of air power, and again, they've got far more air power. Now there is another scenario, and I think there is another one, but I'm not so sure. But part and parcel of this game, I mean, this box here is for air superiority, and you wonder. Well, I was actually wondering, and I did wonder, and I came to a conclusion. But I wondered, why doesn't the Saudi nation, control airspace? Because the Houthis do appear to have some sort of air force. They're carrying out airstrikes, so they've got something. But you would have thought that the Saudis would dominate the airspace throughout. And the conclusion I came to imagine why they weren't is because the Houthis probably have a fairly substantial amount of surface-to-air missile capability of one form or another, probably supplied by Iran. But even, well, it all gets a bit peculiar because you would have thought that at the very least they would be using high altitude bombers, and you can't even get your 50 cal AA guns on that. You need complex surface to air technology, but either way, it strikes me as being a bit odd that the Saudis are not winning, as readily as you might even imagine them to. So much so that, there was a scenario. I have looked at this, and there aren't as many scenarios written up. There's only about 6 pages, which means there's under 60. Up to 10, up to 20, up to 30, up to 40, up to 50, up to 60. I don't know where this scenario is, but it's the one for Hadia, or whatever it is, the port, Hudaydah city. And it's not actually this one that I'm trying to think about. I think it's even further back. Al-Hudayah. Might be this one. No, basically, well, the irony of it is, see, there's a lot of this Hudayah stuff. Haze. The irony of it is that the first one that I did is probably the best one to show for what I want to talk about, or not, because it doesn't have the coast. I'm looking for one that has the coast. Right, this one will do, because it's the whole of Yemen. What I'm getting to here is that the Houthis had, well, in this instance, they had all of it. So they had Zabid, Hayes, Mocha, and the Saudi-led coalition basically came out and were marching north along this coast in what appeared to be an almost unstoppable advance. And there's al-Hudayah there. And they got as far as al-Hudayah. Maybe it was in the mountains, which I don't think it is. But according to this map, it would look like it is. So there's Marib, Al-Hazan. Look at all these places that we sort of know so well now, and sort of accidentally there. Najran, which is in Saudi Arabia. It's all interesting stuff. But when they were marching up there, I just thought, that they were going to win completely. I thought, that it's just a matter of time. They don't have the ability to stop. And I still don't know why they didn't really go in and capture Hudayah. And I think it's basically because, this route through here is more open, where they can dominate and win. But once it became sort of urban fighting, then they were really finding themselves in a position where they were going to lose things. And I don't think the Saudis want to be losing anything whatsoever. But, I always get the feeling that the Saudi-led forces just really are not into it as much. They sort of, they're being paid. And the Houthis are sort of all fairly fanatical about it. It's all interesting stuff. I've been looking at the economy of Yemen, and it's amazing that they can, maintain any degree of, governance throughout all this period, such that they can, they can drive a war effort forward for that amount of time without losing any degree of momentum or morale. I don't know how they're doing it, but it's possibly a product of their sort of inherent poverty, so to speak, because they probably get paid and fed, which is probably a little bit of a motivation. I'm not saying that the Saudi-backed forces are not, but you might have thought that people would sort of wonder why they're doing it. I'm not trying to say they are, or suggest they are. I'm just sort of really talking off the cuff here, really, because there must be some more inherent element between the division between the Houthis and the Hadis, so to speak, that is insurmountable. you know, like some sort of real ethnic divide between the two, as opposed to, you know, two sets of people that are otherwise the same but are just divided by an idea or an ideology or you know, something. And I haven't even got to the bottom of that. I never really understand this war, actually. I mean, I must admit I've not really bothered to look too much into it. I spent most of my time trying to remember the difference between the Hadis and the Houthis. It's like and I can never remember this. It's the Rwanda war. It's the Tutsis. It's the Houthis. It's like I can never remember who's on whose side and what they're fighting for. But I do know in the Rwandan civil war there was a very distinct difference between the physiology between the Houthis and the Tutsis, or whatever they're called. One set being more elegant and tall and thin-faced, and the others being more dwarfy and not tall and thin. And I think that these sorts of things quite often are fundamental in you know, maintaining a division of that nature. You know, essentially it's race. So I imagine that there might be something to do with it. I don't want to say too much sort of controversial or anything, but so anyway, what I was saying here is that in the earlier days, when the Hadis seemed to be doing quite well, I did actually assume that it was just a matter of mopping up, you know, because they've got the Saudis backing them. They had not just the Saudis backing them, but they had you know, the United Arab Emirates, some, you know, other troops from other African nations, and to be quite honest, I never really read too much into what's reported, other than the actual pure kinetics of the situation, i.e., that they are taking this place. This is what's happening. You know, they're moving on al-Labanat base, and they're taking the Arfaj, al-Barash, and al-Aqsha heights. So that's what they're doing. But obviously, what I'm getting to is there's a lot of reporting, which, as I say, I don't really follow or read in too much, and I obviously think a lot of it is probably true, but stating that the Iranians are backing most of the Houthi operations, Ansar Allah operations, and they probably are. But it seems, you know, I mean, I think the thing about Iran that I've slowly dawned on, so to speak, is the vastness of it. I mean, in the Iran-Iraq war, you know, Iraq didn't have much space to fall back on before, you know, if they lost, it would be quite a quick drive through to Baghdad, and they did actually try to drive through to Baghdad on a couple of times, but were stopped. But the thing is, it wasn't sort of like, you know, a bridge too far, whereas to get all the way through the mountains through to Iran, or to even other parts of the country for Iraq would have been, you know, impossible. So, you know, Iran is a vast nation. And the other thing that is really sort of crystallized in my mind, not so much recently, but for a while now, is that the devastation that, you know, the whole of the Middle East has suffered, that Iran hasn't. You know, I mean, at the time of the Iran-Iraq war, both nations were pretty much defeated, but, you know, following the you know, this whole period of war, Iraq has fallen, Syria has fallen, Yemen, I mean, they probably didn't have too far to fall, but they've fallen. Egypt has taken a hit, Libya's been blown to bits. You know, all the other countries, I mean, Israel is standing strong as ever, but they're taking a pounding from this, in the sense that, you know, they're basically on the war footing permanently. I mean, the Lebanon and Jordan, I believe, are although they're not at war, they are suffering the fallout of the war. The whole region is suffering, clearly. I mean, Israel was probably coming out the best. Saudi Arabia probably hasn't taken too much of a hit. I mean, even losing a little bit of functionality for their oil refineries isn't really going to hurt them. Saudi Arabia is an interesting country, really, because I think we can all sort of see the potential of the future of no more oil. And then it's like, it's like one of those things where someone, had a job and they had loads of money, and then what did you do with it? Well, I spent it all on beer, and they've got nothing to show for it. Like the UAE, Dubai, they've really invested in their infrastructure and their cities. So you've got to sort of think, well, what was Saudi Arabia done with their oil revenue? But it's the same with all of these countries. What have they done with all of that? Because as soon as it passes, there won't be much left. I mean, Yemen does actually, I think it relies on its oil exports. It's about 90% of its economy, even though, agriculture is obviously the most important. 50% of that is 50% of their agriculture is used for cat, and even 90% of their water is used for agriculture, but agriculture is only like 5% of their GDP, with 90% of it being oil, etc., etc. And I just think that when you add all this up and balance it all out, what you're left with is the sum total is that Iran is, by the fact that all the other countries have been knocked so far down, is now coming out as a sort of a first world nation by comparison. And I think that was part and parcel of what they wanted to do, and I think it's actually part and parcel of the greater plan. And now here we haven't heard much from it, much more of it, but I understood that the Western plan was to take out Iraq, take out Syria, then take out Iran. You got to think that if that's true, and I don't like to say things that are controversial, but if that is true, then the plan would have been for Iran to be in the same state as Iraq and Syria, i.e., blown to bits, blown back to the Stone Age, as the saying goes. So, the fact that they're not is, I think, quite significant, really. And so, it probably does, in some way, reflect on their ability to actually support the Yemen war as effectively as it would appear that they are. I think, when you read a lot of these reports, it's always, the Houthis have done this. Well, a bunch of people with AK-47s don't make these sorts of advances without some sort of, heavy capability and support. And so, the whole concept of them as a proxy is real. I mean, I would imagine that there is a lot of this sort of proxy war going on. I think that's probably, I don't think a lot of that. That's what I'm saying. I just say, okay, this is the situation. It's a kinetic situation, but when you're looking at it from this situation here, where all of a sudden the Saudis are suddenly winning, they show a lot of pictures of them blowing up these sorts of things, but they're only blowing them up with ATGMs, which you don't make. In the siege of Stalingrad, they made their own submachine gun. I can't remember what it's called now. But things like that you can make. If you've got a CNC machine, you can make munitions. You can even make your own bullets. But you can't make your own ATGMs or SAM missile systems or ballistic missiles. That comes from a highly advanced nation, which is what Iran is becoming. And it's like these things. There's so many pictures of these sort of Saudi vehicles, armored cars, tanks, that they just blow up and they burn and dance on. But the thing is, those things, you get the feeling that they're made of cardboard or they're disposable or something. Those are formidable fighting machines. There was one picture, one video where the Americans are driving through Iraq, on a show of force, so to speak, on one of their patrols, and a local, I think he set fire to it, with a bit of petrol. I mean, I don't think it was really anything major. They didn't really seem to care, and there was a fire, an exchange of fire somewhere, and so when an Iraqi got shot, it was a little controversial. But looking at that video, the thing that made it very clear to me was that those things are formidable. They're these huge iron sardine tins that you can fire at, you can set on fire, you can shoot at with the AK-47, which is what they were doing. You're not going to harm anyone in them. They're armored fighting vehicles, and so it takes more than just sort of like someone with a full clip of whatever caliber AK-47 rounds are firing at them, and so the fact that they're not winning everywhere, I think is quite surprising, really. I know I spent 20 minutes talking absolute crap now. It is late, and but I'm going to sort of have a little twiddle with this now. I did think about this earlier, and I thought, well, how would I do this? Well, because obviously there's the sort of more mobile things here and here. But obviously you've got to take this out, and I thought basically I'd just put all the air power on here, because we should be able to walk through this. I mean, if you look at all this stuff, yellow on yellow doesn't seem like it should work, but I think it does. There's that. That's supposed to be a circle. And then there's that. But there's not much. 1, 2, 3. So we should be able to walk through all of these. I mean, we should be able to drive through them. Look. There's not even a zone of control along that track. I mean, look, there's not even a unit in Arjaf. In actual fact, let me pause this for a minute. Like, I've redone it, so we can start again. Look, I've put someone in Arjaf. I thought, well, considering it's, and they've even embedded him, entrenched him. Okay, so we're going to try and blow this place up. I would have thought the Saudis would have, invested in some super capable armaments. Sort of doing it. Like the C-10, whatever it is, the big American planes that just they loiter in a circle, and they can stay over a target. I mean, obviously drones. I think maybe the Saudis are using drones. I keep reading about them. I can never remember any of this stuff. I really want to sort of try and get more onto the drones and things. But you would have thought that they would just sort of do that, and I think that what might be happening to some extent is that the Houthis are so are so dis- distributed that it's hard to actually hit them. I mean, you're finding that there's more and more firepower going in to take out smaller and smaller targets. I mean, even the use of the ATGMs to take out those little rebel hilltops is hilarious. When you consider that, how warfare should be working and what they were designed to do. They were designed to take out tanks, and they're just taking out dry stone walls and enemy positions. And I think there's an evolution going on there in that regard. But even so, I mean, I imagine it would be quite frustrating when you sort of, I mean, even the Russians are doing it in Idlib and parts of Syria. They're dropping a lot of explosives, even though it's supposedly smart dumb bombs, i.e., they're just dumb bombs, but they're launched with precision accuracy that gives them like about a 5 meter accuracy, as opposed to the American ones, which are sort of laser guided with a half a meter accuracy. I mean, if you're dropping a payload of those bombs and you're killing 3 sheep, it's quite an expensive return on investment. I think that's possibly one of the things that's not so much holding the Saudis back, but something to take into effect. They can bomb a lot of stuff, but if there's only 10 people in a given area and they're distributed maximally across that area, there's a good possibility that you won't actually hit them. And another thing, and I haven't really sort of considered this too much, but I have thought of it a few times. I did look up cat on the Wikipedia, and obviously it's sort of a mild psychedelic, but I was just wondering how mild that psychedelic is, because if your enemy is stoned and on drugs, as they all maybe appear to be, cat, I wonder what effect that actually has on their ability to just, maybe it's because they're all on drugs that they're sort of, they've still got the motivation and the ability to sort of drive forward like this. Anyway, we just tried to blow that up. Let's see how far forward we can get. And that's it. Oh. We want to hit that, but we want to sort of open it up this way, I think. Well, this will be a 6-1. He'll have to retreat there or there. Okay. Okay, I don't like going through dunes. exchange. Okay, well, that's 2-1 at DR. Well, that's obviously not right. 11A. Well, that's fixed. Okay. Thought it was the other way around. I'm so used to playing the other way around. Hmm. Okay. Well, I'm going to let them go. Back. They're here. Rockets. 1.6. This should be a 3-to-1, possibly a 4-to-1. Can somehow block that. Another 3-to-1. Exchange. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm too tired. It's falling asleep. But it's interesting. Maybe if I hadn't talked so much crap at the beginning of the video, I might have got a bit further through. It's tight. In these sort of situations, the only sort of possible mitigation in the sort of is by inflicting these sorts of injuries where we've got them with the rockets over here, 0.3, 0.2, nothing at all. All I have to do is sit there the next turn and they'll be fully recovered. A little bit of damage, but here it's quite significant. 1.6. It's those things that you need to get them a few times, and then if they continue to leave them exposed like that, they can be destroyed. I mean, that's happened before. I mean, obviously not going to win, but if they can take out a few units like that, that would be almost make it a victory. Yeah. Okay, I'll speak later. Cheers, bye.